prop bet, and when Craig gets sabotaged because he jacks up his leg or something and gets injured, he has to donate $365 to the North Carolina Tar Heels Scholarship Fund.
Never happened.
I love this.
I would crawl.
That idea.
I would crawl 365 miles through broken glass and fire ants.
You gotta do, get to the bag. Stay at your 9 to 5, get on the avenue. You ain't cut out for them tags. Yeah.
You know, a lot of good advice, I guess. I see. It's a bunch of bullshit. And it's a lot of fun. You can win a lot of money. I will not hurt you. Come to the light, children. Play.
You muted?
Hey, I'm here.
Look at that.
I'm back.
Rob muted. Uh-oh.
Well, hello, universe. That intro was great, wasn't it? Rob's muted, can't unmute.
Real life problems are occurring.
Oh, we're doing it again.
Do a prop bet, and when Craig gets sabotaged because he jacks up his leg or something and gets injured, he has to donate $365 to the North Carolina Tar Heels Scholarship Fund.
Never happened.
I love this.
I would crawl.
That idea.
I would crawl 365 miles through broken glass and fire ants.
You gotta do, get to the bag. Stay at your 9 to 5, get on the avenue. You ain't cut out for them tags. Yeah.
You know, a lot of good advice, I guess. I see. It's a bunch of bullshit. And it's a lot of fun. You can win a lot of money. I will not hurt you. Come to the light, children. Play.
By light, he means dark, by the way.
Yeah.
For sure.
You better believe they're looking for me. One time, I'm going for mine.
I plan on studying 4-bet shove spots versus a 3-bet squeeze when there's 2 limpers in the pot already at about 55 big blinds, 3/4 of the way through the tournament.
I feel like you owe us a double dose of input into the hand history, John.
Yeah, where's that 40 bucks?
Fuck GTO.
Yes.
I'ma go get it. We just keep pushing the limit. I am like all the way with it, all the way living. Y'all are just bearing the weight.
Poker is like never going to be solved right. I mean, too many combinations. We all know that. Like you can maybe solve pre-flop charts, whatever, but there's too many combinations of decision making to ever have it be solved. So, I mean, can't you get to almost the very top and just let your opponents make mistakes?
Maybe I'm not, but I'm better than you, yeah. But all of them voices, we got them. Lie to me, Hillary Rodham. I just came back from my kid in the bottom.
Yeah, I'll do the dad hat thing. I'll do it.
All right, we're in.
You have to do the North Carolina hat. No, we won't make him not wear a hat because I want to walk around with the guy. That's the first thing, is I do want to enjoy my time out with the guy. You know, we go to dinner. I don't want people staring at me. But like the North Carolina thing, yeah, we can do that.
Is anybody gonna win a Grizzly before the series is over?
I'm gonna play one first.
I'm gonna win one. Fuck it, let's go.
Yeah, I gotta go. This how it go. Yeah, I'm dying to let you just so you know. I gotta go. This how it go. Yeah, I'm dying to let you just so you know. Yeah, I'm going for mine. Going for mine. You put it on me. You put it on me. You better believe. You better believe. You better believe they're looking for me. Yeah. I'm going for mine. You put it on mine. You better believe they're looking for me. I'm going for mine. You put it on mine. Believe they're looking for me. Yeah. I'm going for mine. You put it on mine. You better believe they're looking for me. I'm going for mine. You put it on mine. You better believe they're looking for me.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Chase the Dream podcast. It is apparently Halloween or April 1st or something, because we're all having all kinds of fun glitches here on the podcast, but we're happy you're here. I think it's because the ladies are gone. Everything goes to shit when the ladies aren't here. You know, when Day's here and Mika's here, it kind of carries the podcast, but they're both out traveling the country right now. Day is currently in Colorado and has a very juicy stack over there. And what is the Colorado State Championship? What's she playing in?
Yeah, Blackhawk.
Yeah. Yep.
Over at Blackhawk. And Mika is on a plane right now, en route somewhere. So they're off crushing. And then Brett is working, I think, on his OnlyFans account or something. I don't know. He's taking pictures.
Or selling his house.
No.
Or selling his house. You know, one of those things.
He's updating the garage for a new background. That's what he's doing.
So it's just the boys tonight. And all the married boys, actually. Just the married boys tonight. We're going to have a good time. I wanted to point out that as of today, 2025 is already 15% over. We are already 1/6 of the way through this year. And I don't know about all of you, but it feels like it has been 8 minutes. Like, I feel like I was celebrating New Year's like just a week ago, and now all of a sudden it's almost March. It's getting warm. We're all getting miserably sick and full of allergies and coughing our brains out. And it had me thinking about what I've accomplished in this first 2 months and kind of where I'm at and where I want to go. And I thought it would be good for us to all kind of just have a little, time out, hit the tee, right, Coach? Hit the timeout and kind of just reflect on where we're at, where we're going. There's no timeouts in soccer?
No timeouts in soccer. No.
Really? I gotta ask, Craig.
Is that a thing?
The player, that's no such thing. It's a player's game.
This is why Craig has no voice, because he's screaming the instructions for 90 plus minutes across the field.
I'm pretty
How
quiet.
does stoppage time work in high school? Do you guys have stoppage time? Is that a thing?
They stop the clock. The referee will stop the clock on injuries and goals, so they just kind of run the clock down. But some places they'll do stoppage time where the referee keeps it on the field.
Have you ever argued with a ref about how much stoppage time you should have gotten?
There's times when I want them to end the damn game because we have a 1-goal lead and the other team's about to score a goal, and I'm like, this game is over 2 minutes ago. Let's go. Let's get off the field.
Swallow the whistle. Yeah.
Let's blow that thing. Let's get this thing out of here.
Yeah,
for sure.
I coach soccer, but not quite at the level you did, Craig. It was pee-wee soccer, so
that's the best kind.
Didn't have to worry about timeouts. We didn't have to worry about refs. We just had to worry about making sure our kids were dressed warm enough for the
right. And
13-degree weather.
Right.
Yeah, and the oranges. Why was kids soccer always when it was so cold outside? Like, why
because
couldn't we have kids
they were
soccer
allowed
to
get on the fields that were available? Otherwise, it was baseball season or football season or whatever. But when we were kids, there weren't dedicated soccer parks like there are today.
I asked Craig that. I asked Craig that. I was like, why the hell are you guys outside on the coldest damn time of the damn year? He kind of broke it down to me, but I still think it's senseless.
Yeah, we're in Texas where football is king, and so trying to get field space in the fall is pointless. And then baseball in the spring and track, and now lacrosse is becoming a big thing in high school sports, and that's a spring sport. So we have to wedge it, but mostly it's to get away from club soccer, which is so big in the spring and fall. So we have to find a time to carve out some school soccer.
And Jay, you got to see this awesome soccer team in action, didn't you?
I did, man. I took my son. That was your last
district game,
right? Yeah. Yeah. My son and I went, and I asked him if he wanted to go. He's like, hell yeah, I want to go. So we went and got to sit right on the sidelines, right behind Coach Yost, and watch him push his team. I'll tell you, man, that team, my son was like overly impressed about how just athletic that team was and how in shape they were, I mean, you were definitely far superior versus the team that you were up against, in my opinion. But
we're pretty good.
Yeah, you're definitely a way better team. But you can just tell the work that they've put in all year, man. It showed. But yeah, I got to watch it, man. It was pretty good. He beat up a team on their senior night on their home field. That's pretty.
Yeah, that's always nice. That's always nice.
Very nice. So let's get into it here. Let's talk about where we're at here in 2025, and let's go ahead and start with Coach here. I might just start calling you Coach. I kind of like that. It's kind of.
I told you.
I kind of like that. We're gonna call Coach. So Coach, I want to start with you. Where are you at in 2025 right now, and how are you feeling about life?
I'd say I'm behind where I want to be. I'm always behind where I want to be. I from a poker standpoint, I've not given poker near the attention that I thought I would have by this point in the year, or that I want to. But I am in the midst of, like Jay was talking about, a very intense soccer season, and I'm also battling the calendar and the clock on my curriculum. My courses, I mean, I'm sprinting to get caught up or be on time to have my students prepared for their AP exams. And the soccer program, I mean, we're on the verge, and we have a game Thursday night that if we win, we're on to the Final Four, and it's a big deal, and I'm feeling a lot of pressure. To be fair, I don't high school sports and coaching, the pressure can be real. I think it's kind of intensified at our school in particular because some of our other programs have been really, really successful over the last few years. Like we have a state, our football team has been in the state championship 5 years in a row. Our basketball team won the state championship last year. So there's an expectation that you're going to get out there and compete. And the soccer program used to be kind of like the marquee program, and we've just fallen on hard times the last couple of years. We've been rebuilding. And kind of like keeping up with the Joneses. Like everyone else is having so much success that I'm feeling some pressure for this team to kind of like have that breakthrough moment. And as good as we've been this season, I still don't feel like we've kind of reached our potential. And I mean, the pressure is real. It's not like I haven't done it before. I've coached state championship teams in both Georgia and Texas, and I know what it takes. And you know how you have a team that's like, they're talented, but they don't. Sometimes I question if they have that thing that makes the difference between a team that's just good and a team that can win. And it's mostly like they're battle tested. And so, yeah, different it factor there, Sean. And I just feel like we're so close, but I also don't know if the boys it's almost like they're naive. They don't know what's right in front of them, like how close they are and how great they can be. And I think sometimes that naivete can work in your favor. I would say, like when I went to play in the main event of WSOP that first time, I was right. Very naive, and it massively worked in my favor. I just was so naive. I didn't know better than you're not supposed to be here, and you certainly aren't supposed to be here on day 6. And that naivete probably worked in my favor. And so on some level, these guys kind of being a little bit like naive about what's in front of them, what's potentially there for them, may be good, but part of me wishes they had a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit better perspective on it. So, I'm not sure. We have one more practice. We practice tomorrow morning, and then we play Thursday night, and we're either going to earn an extension on our season and head down to Round Rock, Texas with the other best 3 teams in the state, and then of those teams, we've played them before. We've come up short, but like we've battled. We're right there, and this year's team could really do it. And so, that has been a massive, like, I mean, it's what I do. So it's not like I'm upset about. It's like my focus has been there, and my poker has been like a second thought for sure. But the max it can go is another 2 weeks. Like we finished out this week, and next week we'd head down to Round Rock, and then we're either going to come out champions or we're going to come out disappointed, and then I will switch my focus and get back to trying to get myself to that place that I want my boys to get to in terms of winning things. So that's what I'm up against.
What do you think? Remember I know last year, I think you were saying your team, you struggled a little bit last year, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. What do you think is the biggest difference from like last year to this year?
Well, coaches make players. I mean, players make coaches. Players make coaches. Like we got a couple guys back that we lost for the whole year last year on injury. We had a couple of new guys to the school that are just, they're freshmen, or there's a new sophomore that moved in. And the biggest difference is depth. Like we had talent last year. We just had the depth. And then the depth, what the depth does for you, it's not like it's not like, oh, we're just like bringing 5 guys off the bench and another 5 guys. It's not even that. It's the depth creates competition at practice.
Right.
If the guy knows that if I don't practice hard, the other guy next to me is going to start, because there's depth, there's guys fighting for playing time, then everybody rises up because you're pushing each other. We've talked a little bit about this. Like I feel like we have some depth on our team, our poker team, right? Like I know, like it pushes us all to want to be a little bit better, because not that we're competing for a starting job or you're going to take my playing time, but like there's something about being around other good players that makes you play better. And when you don't have that push, when you know that I can slack off for practice and still get playing time, then I don't care how motivating you are as a coach. You can only do so much to get players to work hard when their playing time is pretty much guaranteed. And so I think that's probably the biggest difference. Also, my coaching staff is maturing. I have an assistant coach that's been with me for a long time, and she is my age. So we've been around a long time, but I have a young assistant coach who's really coming into his own, and watching him like gain confidence and command the boys' attention and really grow in that has been really fun to watch. Really, really fun to watch.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks like you had a lot of like iron sharpens iron this year versus like last year,
Yeah.
Or consistency too, right?
Yeah, there were games last year we were holding on by a thread. Like, are we going to have enough guys to get to the end of the game? A guy would be on the field, look at me, goes, "Coach, I need a sub." I look at my bench. I was like, "No, you don't." I mean, you might need one, but you're not going to get one. So this year, we go to the bench, and the guys play, and it's been great. It's been really good.
So I'm curious, how well do you compartmentalize all of this? You talk about like being behind on poker, not where you want to be. Does this pressure leak over into the poker game when you're sitting at the poker table? Do you start at 0 baseline, or are you already kind of like pressure's already at like 6 out of 7, and then anything that happens in poker is just adding on top of that?
No, I think I do a really good job of compartmentalizing lots of different parts of my life. Like my teaching is compartmentalized from my coaching. And what's interesting is I'll have players of mine in my class, and I go from earlier in the morning in coach mode, and then they come into my class, and I can be upset with them there, and it's a switch. With that said, I do a lot of teaching on the field, a lot of coaching in my classroom, if that makes sense. Like I do think that those two skill sets help each other, and I will often be in coach mode with and a lot of my non-athlete students who are like, these kids are the artists of the school and the dancers and the singers. I'll lean it, and they're like, look at me kind of funny sometimes because I go into coach mode with them, but they really appreciate, like, I treat them like, look, we're all in this together. We're going to fight to the end, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to win. But winning means making a 5 on the AP exam type of thing. But I can compartmentalize those parts. And then when I go and play poker, that's a whole different set of challenges for me, because now I'm mostly competing against myself. Like my biggest enemy and I think all of this is probably true. Like there was that book, your worst poker enemy. Like I don't remember. It was like a mindset book, but like we're our own worst enemy at the poker table. I'm my own worst enemy at poker table. I'll say that. And so I can't take any of those other frustrations or anxieties from coaching or teaching onto there. And then the same thing, like when we're away from either of those domains and I come home and I'm doing family time, I can't carry my coaching, my teaching, or my poker into my family time if I want to give that the quality that it deserves. Now, a little bit of that leaks over because my assistant coach that I'm so happy with happens to be my son, and he's really growing into that. And so sometimes at home we get into and we're talking about practice and tactics and what we're going to do, but we try to turn it off at home.
Well, I suck at that part because my wife gets she gets all the hand histories as soon as I get home.
Jay, couldn't you have been a little bit more patient?
Yeah, I could have been a little more patient.
She's a good coach. She's a good poker coach.
So you come out of the season, hopefully with a state championship, but to be determined. And now it's March, right? You've got 3 months until the summer. You're already looking at houses and different options, and you feel behind on the poker side.
For sure. Sean and I talked about this. This is how Sean and I first met. Was I always felt like in the winter when I'm at my busiest time, my poker game would really fall off. I would lose any sharpness I had, and then I would spend spring trying to catch up, getting my brain back sharpened and really playing my best poker. And I would go out to Las Vegas, and right at the end of the trip, I would feel like, oh, there it is. Now it is. And it would be over. And so I was like, I need to hit Vegas at that point when I'm like, oh, there it is. I'm back in my groove versus leaving Vegas feeling that way. And it's like, oh, well, you've missed your chance. So I've got to spend that time post soccer season really getting where I feel confident that my poker is sharp. And for me, I'm the type of person that if I'm not studying fairly regularly, even if it's studying things that I feel pretty strong about, like really honing it, it's about building my own confidence. And I'm a creature of habit, and I need the reps. And I know we all have different feelings about like actual studying poker, but I enjoy studying. And I know that when I am in my studying mode, I am playing better poker. And when I'm not, I tend to autopilot too much and do something and then try to backwards justify and make excuses for why I played a certain way versus like when I'm studying, I'm much more honest with myself.
Yeah. You have time, right? Like there's plenty of time before that.
Yeah, but I never feel like it's enough.
Yeah, but there's something to be said of you putting too much on yourself as well. Like,
that's a pretty long history of me doing that to myself from a pressure standpoint and an expectation standpoint. But that's I don't know if we can change our core character at this stage in our lives. I don't know if that part's going to change.
You probably should press charges on yourself for the abuse that you give yourself.
Probably. Yeah. I'll talking about abuse. I was in the gym for a week finally when I got cleared to go back in the gym, and then I got the flu, so I was out. I went back in the gym this week. Monday morning, I worked out so hard that I vomited, and I was like, yes, because I'm that sick. Like I'm sick, like not sick. I'm sick, like I got a cold, but like I'm just that damaged that
you and Sean, man. I don't know what to do with the two of you, man.
Sean, what long-standing horror series would you recommend that Craig watches after soccer season?
Craig is not watching horror movies
to get him like situated for the poker grind. Like he just needs a little breather before he gets into the poker room.
No.
Oh, there are plenty of choices. I'm
not going to do it. I don't. That's another personality thing. I don't enjoy being like. I enjoy being scared, like hiking up hiking last year in Utah, Angel's Landing. That scared the piss out of me, and it was awesome. That's the kind of scared I want to be. I don't want to be scared that. Nah, I can't handle that. I can't handle scary movies.
Could you do one of those scary, like, they've got the haunted houses now that like you literally have to sign a release to walk into, and they put cockroaches on you and spiders. No. The adrenaline run.
There's very few things in the real world, like in my real life, I don't get scared. Like I just don't I don't fear much. I found out this summer that I had what I think is a rational and healthy fear of certain heights, like certain situations. I don't like sheer drop offs, but but things don't scare me. But scary movies, for some reason, I don't have the constitution for it. I don't feel like I'm missing anything, by the way. I know Sean thinks I'm missing out on like a huge like form of art that I'm not, I agree. I think that there's probably something I'm probably missing something, but I don't care. It's kind of like people tell me I should try sushi and I'm like, you're missing out. I'm like, I don't care. I don't like it.
Well,
I'm not.
If you guys are interested in horror movies or video games, make sure you follow Craig on Twitter. He will.
I don't know anything about either of those.
About either of those topics.
You need to see a doctor, man. You have some deep-rooted issue somewhere that you probably need to get out. Maybe Brett, he actually gave me some advice. He told me to try some hypnosis. Maybe you should get hypnotized, figure out what the hell's going on in your brain.
I don't feel, you guys act like I'm I'm damaged in a way that I'm missing out on something important.
Oh, you are. Let me tell you something, buddy.
I'm a psychologist. I teach psychology. I do understand why I may or may not be damaged or different, but I don't think it's in a way that's like causing me to miss out on anything important. So,
Craig, I'm gonna let you borrow this summer. I just got this bad boy.
What is that?
This is
that a cell phone?
Ambernick. This is it is kind of. It's an Ambernick RG406. All right.
What are you talking about?
An Android. It's an Android device. Okay. And it has every video game from the Atari 2600 up through like the GameCube and PS2.
I don't have time for that shit, Rob.
And well, you do, because guess what I'm going to be doing on level 1 of the Venetian Uber Deep Stack this summer when my entire table is bots who I don't need to think and play poker against, and I can autopilot for the first 6 hours. I'm going to be playing some Legend of Zelda up in here, some Super Smash Brothers, maybe a little Mario Kart, some Final Fantasy.
I'm going to be watching how guys' eyes twitch and how they're moving their chips.
Like
and how
when
they're
you play the seniors event and you're tempted to like bluff catch, you can be like, you know what? Nah, I'm just going to play some video games. I'm going to sit this one out.
Like fire up the Contra.
Hell yeah. Jay, thank you, my brother.
Up, down, left, right. AB, select, start. Yep.
I just think about all the hours of my life that I've gotten to live in the real world because I was never into video games.
I think about all the hours in
the books
I've life
read.
that I am more effective at what I do because of the hours I spent playing video games to re-energize.
I don't know,
myself.
man.
But
I don't know. I'd rather read.
Last question for you, Craig.
Sure.
Because I could relate when you were talking about like the it factor. One of the things that drove me nuts as a coach, and I didn't like say this because I would have been a terrible coach, but when we were in sports as kids, like, right before the sporting event, it was like we had the Walkman on, we had our mixtape in. Don't talk to me, don't tap me, don't joke. Like I'm focused, locked in. This is life or death.
Yeah.
And nowadays, like kids, it's just like. They could be in the state championship 10 minutes before the game, and they're like pushing each other around. They're joking about something that they're not there. And when I always experienced that, it made me so determined to get back into that I would literally I'd get back into poker and I'd be like, I'm going. Nobody and for the next 2 weeks, I'd just be like, get the fuck out of my way because I am running over every tournament. Do you get that? Like, is there going to be some oomph if you guys lose next week where you're like, I'm going into the summer and I'm going to have the it factor?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a little different, like soccer versus like wrestling. As a wrestler, like no one talked to me before a match. Like, don't even think about talking to me. Like I've already wrestled. The match has been wrestled on my head. I'm redoing it. I was that person, and I was super dialed in, super focused. Don't talk to me after the match either, especially if I lost. Like we're not talking.
Right.
My family, I didn't lose a lot, but when I did lose, my family knew. Don't even bother. Don't tell me. Like it was the thing where my dad was, oh, you really did well. I did not do well. I lost. Or if it was like well, why didn't you do this? Like, well, how would you know? Like there was nothing they could say that was right ever.
Right.
So my family just quickly learned, don't talk to me. Like they didn't talk to me for 3 months during wrestling season every year.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it would just be like, leave me alone. I'm not eating. I'm pissed at the world. I hate everything. Leave me alone. I just want to win. Now, this is the difference. I was not a very effective wrestling coach because I have coached wrestling, and I was a very effective wrestler. As a soccer player, I was limited. I was a good player and I played on some really good teams, But the only reason I was able to be on those teams was I was able to exploit the other strengths I had: communication, share the ball, be a facilitator. And that has really helped me be a good soccer coach, because I wasn't the best player on my soccer team. I was an effective player. I knew who the best player was, and I passed on the ball every time. But on the wrestling team, I was one of the best guys. And so when I was coaching wrestling, I struggled to understand the kid who was like a hard worker but not great. I struggled coaching that person but I have that kind of patience on the soccer field, because I can relate more to the struggle of not getting it right away. Now, my really good players on the soccer team, they have very little patience with some of those guys sometimes, and they get really frustrated with them, and I have to kind of mediate. But yeah, kids today, there's still some of those guys, by the way, that are like that old school locked in, and they're special. They are special, and they're out there. And when you see them, you grab hold of them, because they're going to be your special ones. For sure.
Well, I look forward to you like propping your shoulders up as you're walking in to the Paris, listening to Beastie Boys. And you're just like
Rage Against the
flaunting.
Machine.
Yeah, like I'm looking forward to that.
A little bit of Lunatic Fringe, Red Rider from the
Let's go
Vision Quest album. That was my song before every wrestling match. Yeah,
I like it. All right, Jay, what's going on with you, bud? Obviously, it's like 55 degrees in Texas, so you got to wear
what's on your sign
in the house.
What's on your sign back there?
Oh,
I'm in a much better mood now. Last week we were all red back there. See that?
Now we're all green.
Right
That's
now,
good. Green to go. Green for money.
Because the mindset is strong. Well, I don't know if the money's coming with, but the mindset is there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think you kind of really made it interesting here, Rob, in regards to like the conversation of like 15% into the year, and some overall goals. And I'm starting to realize like what I've been going through. To give you just some background and insight is, I think like part of my wonderful run, my wonderful exciting run at the table lately, aka getting wrecked. I think is a lot of like a synergy problem for me, I know like we talked about, especially back in like our first episode, like we were sharing goals with everyone. I knew that I was going to have a lot on my plate this year. You know what I mean? But I just been like on this entrepreneur roller coaster, and I think what it's doing for me is like it's impacting like my true thought process. Like I never want to feel like, hey, I'm not playing well, if that makes sense. Right. But I think a lot of it is just some of the subliminal stuff. Because you guys know, like typically my mindset is fairly strong, but I spent some time for the last couple of days. I know you guys have probably noticed I've been a little bit quieter than than normal. You don't get much out of me. But I think like that's been like a big part of it. I just think like the synergy has really been off for me. I've been trying to determine like, how do I balance like all of my businesses? Because as you guys know, and, I'll share here, like I don't, I kind of have more than one. But it's like, how do I balance that? Right. And then like, how do I also like not lose momentum? You know what I mean? With everything that I have in place. Because I'm always going for new opportunities as well. Right. So when new opportunities come, like I'm trying to go after them. And I know like there's kind of like, the shiny object syndrome, you know what I'm saying? And like, for me, like in the past, going through like building my businesses, I've delegated a lot of tasks. Because I am one of those, like, I'm a believer in the less I do, the more I make, right? And that essentially comes with like a lot of delegation and like passing these things off. But what I started realizing is over the past couple of weeks is looking in the past, and even like recently now, some of my fail points, right? Because I've had businesses that I've started that have failed, and where I'm missing is I'm not getting to a place of like where I feel comfortable that it's sustainable, right? And it's scalable, and that I'm allowing it to just run. And I'm not like putting like guardrails in place, you know. It's kind of like I get it there, I delegate a task, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go launch this now, you know, like how do I go and how do I launch a business to do this?
Right.
I'll get that going, and then I move on because I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good opportunity somebody brought to me, you know.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm really starting to see this year is because I wanted to go so hard. You know, I've had to revisit like the trucking business. Like, you know, we originally started off, you know, I was doing a lot of on the broker side, and then like started doing the carrier side. But because I didn't let the broker side settle in the way that it was, and I wanted to move to the carrier side, it was kind of like, okay, there's money, but we're not maximizing our dollar, right?
Right.
So like the big thing, what I've really come to realization that I'm going to be doing a little bit differently, and that's why I've been spending the last couple of weeks on, is like really setting the goal, right? And the structure on it, so that I have the guardrails in place. So example, if I set a goal to say, hey, I know that if I can get, you know, 15 drivers on the road, I get to that point, that's sustainable, right? And I can scale from that point. And once I get there, I can have things set up as a business structurally, right? So that that operates. And now I can move on to the next, you know, business that I have, right? Or it allows me to put time into my other business. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense, you know?
It's a question. So it sounds like to me that there's a question of when is less more.
Right. And I think like to your point, that's where I'm a multiple streams guy, right? I learned this in my old business. So I don't know, we've talked about this in the past, but you know, I had a business in the past where I did satellite. This was back when satellite was booming, right? And I had accounts all over North America. I was in like 16 different states, right?
Wow.
But yeah, I had 325 technicians working for me. But I can tell you that in that space, man, I only focused on that and did nothing else. Like I had nothing else coming in, right? And I lost that business overnight. Like I was going from making $20,000 to $30,000 a week, like that's net, like me personal profit, to go into losing like half of that in a week, and then pretty much not having any of it, to where I had to pretty much bankrupt the business, not due to anything that I did because there was a middleman in there, right? But I was young, you know. All I saw was I'm setting myself up to, you know, give my family, you know what I mean, a good future. But I didn't know then like all the other things that I needed to put in place to ensure, again, like that it was scalable, or what happens if this falls apart, what else do I have to lean on, right? So I put all my eggs in one basket, you know. And I think I started realizing like I have to take opportunities. I mean, I don't have this hustle sign behind me, you know, and you guys know me, like I just like to go hard. But I think to your point, it was kind of like, where's the balance, right? To say like, can I be extremely successful in just this one business? I could, but I'm never going to fall back in the place of what happened to me in the past, you know, like that was like my burn point, you know what I mean? Because it was like I lost literally like everything, and I had to start life over, you know, and that was pretty painful, man. I mean, I was on, I think at that point it was my 5th child.
You have so many.
The youngest one came right after that.
You can't keep track.
Yeah, man, it's a lot. But you know, like it's a lot, you know, like I had an impact in my marriage. Like there was a lot that happened during that time. And I learned a lot from that, you know. So I think right now, me taking those lessons learned and then actually like baking some of that in currently with some of the things that I'm doing, now that I've kind of like set some like guardrails, you know, I am actually in a place where if I sustain what I'm doing now, just from like 2 of the businesses that I kind of have in place outside of poker right now, I mean, I'm looking to be well over 500K this year, that I could net. If I stick to that plan,
Right.
I've said in the past, right, that I've walked away from the game before for whatever reasons. A lot of the time it was because of like my mindset just wasn't there, and getting wrecked and like, and I think for me, having these other projects as well allows me to like shift my thoughts, right? So like when poker's not going good, that's fine, right? Like whatever, I still have these other things that I'm doing that are also long-term for me, that put some foundation, in place. So I think like I'm in a good space now. I think I learned a lot over the last couple of weeks. I mean, I'm still getting wrecked on the table, but but again, I think a lot of that, some of it is synergy, man. I think that there's a good part of that I just was like, okay, something's happening in the background mentally. And I probably, should contact my neuroscience coach.
Could help.
But I think
might help.
Huh?
I could help.
Yeah, but I do think like overall, I'm on the right path. Things are looking up, and I just realized that there's a time and a place for everything. Like I talked to you, Rob, last week of like some certain things, and I'm just like from a schedule perspective, I just go. Like things pop up, I go. This pops up, I go. This go. So where now I'm like, okay, like I need to structure this out a little bit because there's probably other opportunities that I am missing on, right? That I'm not even having conversations about because I was kind of shotgunning everything, because I never want to miss an opportunity, man. Like things pop up and I'm a believer. Like if I let certain things pass by, I'm just like, yeah, this thing may not come back around again,
So let's just say it's a year from now and business is successful, money in the bank. You own like all the Haktua coin on the planet. You're just like crushing life.
Damn,
and
bought that coin.
Like, what's the end game? Like, what does poker look like in that world? Like, what are you? Obviously, you're motivated, and yeah, business can be a fun thing and a skill and a hobby that becomes very lucrative. But where do you want this to take you?
Yeah. So one of my ultimate goals out of all of this, and my wife and I were actually having this discussion because she knows, like, she forces me to play the game. There's days that I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna play. She's like, you're kidding me? Like, you can't win if you're not at the table. Like she really forces me out of the house a lot. I will tell you, there's times, guys, like that I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna play today. And she'd be like, no, like you need to go. But if I structure this correctly, to your point, Rob, right, to what you're asking, this allows me to kind of really focus more on the game and push myself to playing at more of the elite levels. You know what I mean? Because I'll have this structure behind everything else to where like my business is kind of running and my wife is my rock, like she's one of those, like, don't worry about this. I'll take care of the business. You go do your thing. But as we build it, right, we kind of need each other, you know what I mean, to kind of get those things in place. But what it would allow me to do is put that much more effort, that much more time into the game.
Right.
And I'll be able to do that with the mindset of I'm not worried about what's going on with my businesses in the background. I have to get to that place because I know that that's something that would prevent me from like getting to the next level,
Yeah. Makes sense. Are you how does this all, we talked to Craig about the summer. How does this all fit into your summer?
I
have to like taper.
yeah. But I think, again, what I didn't do last year was allow myself, last year there's some other different circumstances, but there were times where like Craig was with me, like I get a phone call from my wife, she's like, and we were going after like a big account, but she had to handle that and have those conversations on her own, where this year I think the difference is giving myself the ability, or going into it knowing that if I have to leave for a couple of days, just bring it on home, You know what I'm saying? Or like bring the things with me that I know, like on my down days, right? Because you don't play every single day. Aside of being sick, there were days that I took off. You know what I mean? And I think from a mental piece, what it will also do is, I think the best way we stay sharp and we kind of keep, again, like build some good synergy within ourselves is having other. I was listening to something about this last week. I think I sent this over to you, Rob. It's like having all of these other projects as well, you know, that kind of keeps our brain going. You know what I mean? It keeps it fresh. So like I didn't go out there with a laptop last year. I didn't go out with anything prepared for any of that, right? Because it was kind of like, hey, you take care of this while I'm doing this. But I think I'm in a place also with my game that I can step away in the middle of all that, take care of business, you know what I mean, on a day off, and then go back and play the game. You know, I think it's no different than like you having you know, the game console. You know what I mean?
Love this
because there's going to be there's going to be those moments of like you're just like you shouldn't be thinking about the game. You know what I mean? So that you don't go on burnout. You know, and I think like for this summer, I would just allow myself the ability to say like, hey, there may be a day or two, like if I had to fly back or whatever. You know, just be more flexible. You know what I mean?
I had days in Vegas where I had to set aside hours to grade papers for my summer course.
Right. Yep. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't exciting, Rob, but yeah, I definitely you know, I'm like, hey, you want to play cash? He's like, I think I'm gonna do some grading today. Yeah.
I could just see the juxtaposition. You know, Craig's sitting over at the desk drinking a yerba mate, talking about grading papers. Jay's on the other side of the room in underwear, like, bro, you want a buffalo? Like,
Yeah, he's gonna,
you know,
right.
That's
just,
after I've been to the gym and come back.
Yeah, because your day starts at 4:30 in the morning, and that's when Jay ends his day.
Right.
So.
When he was coming back, getting out of the shower, getting dressed on his way to the rail, my alarm was going off. So
oh, that's a good time.
Yeah. So I think and I think this is for a lot of folks, man. Like when we're you know, we encounter these things within our poker careers, and you know, we have a lot going on, and you know, yeah, I used to be the standard rec guy, you know what I mean? Recreational player, or even just, you know, a very serious hobby. And, you know, I chose differently, right? Like I chose to say like, hey, I'm going to take this on more from a professional level, you know? And I think that there's always a place where you can do extremely well in the game, but some type of supplemental income off the felt is necessary, you know.
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah, like, and that is some of what I wanted to do, you know. It just so happens that I see opportunities and I'm like, yep, I'm not passing this up. I got to go after it. I just needed to make sure, you know, I put a little more structure, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, it's funny. I worked insane hours in my 30s. When me and my wife first met and we moved back to Illinois, and her 3 girls moved in with us, I had my son. There were years where I averaged 90 hours a week working, the entire years. And I've always been a hard worker. I've always been a go-getter, go after it, bust tail. It's the way I played sports. It's the way I've done life. I've always been 110% guy. But for the longest time, it was like I'd put in A and I'd get back B, and B was not anywhere near as big as A. Seemed like I would just work really, really hard and there just would never be a payoff. And then, you know, occasionally things would come up and it'd be like, oh, this is going to be the thing. I think if I just, you know, push through and I persevere and go a little longer, this is going to be the thing that breaks things open. And it was just like, get your hopes up, be disappointed, get your hopes up, be disappointed, to the point where, you know, some friends and family members would be like, you know, what are you excited about? Oh, I'm excited about this project I'm working on. Oh yeah, well, we've heard that before, Rob. Like you've told us before, this is going to be the thing that works. And yeah, okay. Like I'd lost credibility. And this kind of led me to a place where like I had this chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove myself in poker, in business, in life. Like I wanted to prove to everybody that I was a superhuman badass that works harder than everybody else and wants it more than everybody else. And that's going to amount to something. And it never did. And then, a couple years ago, as kind of my poker goal shifted and I stopped wanting to prove myself in poker without realizing. And I think that transformation kind of started evolving into other parts of my life. All of a sudden it was like, I don't need to stream poker anymore. Like, I don't really like streaming poker. This isn't something I love doing. This is something I was doing for other reasons, whether it was monetization or, again, trying to prove myself, trying to put my game out there, whatever. And I started to just kind of like phase shift. And I think what the turning point has been is I've gotten away from things that would prove anything to anybody, and I've gotten into things I love. And that shift has been very huge for me, because now, even though we're not at a point yet where anything I've done has completely come to fruition, now I'm doing things that have a kickback to me because I love doing them. Right. The content I'm making in social media and doing things outside of streaming, I enjoy 1,000 times more than I ever enjoyed with streaming. So there's a kickback to it. Whereas like streaming, it was like, fuck, I got to hit the stream button. I mean, there were days, and Drew's said this sometimes too. I'm not the only one, but like, if you've never streamed before, there's days where you're like, all right, got to stream tonight, announced I was going to stream. And you're sitting there in front of OBS and you're like, you just don't
right.
Yep. So there was some healthy kickback from that. And that timeline has kind of lined up with the other timeline, which is just, there has been a lot of things in my personal life, in my mental game, my mindset, my mental health, my physical health, that I've been planting seeds for a very, very, very long time. And it's all lining up. Harvest season's coming. Like, I'm starting to see results from things I've been working on for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And it's funny because my wife will routinely ask me, I'd say maybe like once a month, we'll be having a conversation. She'll be like, are you even happy? And I'll laugh because I'm like, I don't think you realize like how close I am to my dream life. Like, I look at what I'm doing now and I look at where I'm at and I'm like this close to like absolutely everything I could ever possibly want in life. I'm like right there. But it doesn't convey because I'm so focused and locked in and working so hard that I look like a miserable human being at times. My poor wife has to put up with that. So I have to like communicate that I'm doing okay. But I'm in this place where it's like, all of a sudden, like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Everything I'm working on right now, and I got my hands in a lot of things like Jay does, but everything I'm working on right now is growing. And everything I'm working on right now is enjoyable. And I'm exhausted because I am on this like last lap. There's some projects I need to finish and get to the finish line on. But once those projects are done, I'm there. Like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been working for 25 years. And so there is this like difficult balance between like just wanting to get it done, because I'm very much the guy. It's like, if there's something that needs to get done and there's 120 hours to do it, I just want to lock myself in a room until it's done and not leave the room until it's done, with not completely burning myself and torching myself out ahead of this summer. So, I'm trying to find that balance. I've been taking 30-minute degen breaks, Craig, and it's actually really cool. So you guys won't care about this, but maybe somebody on the pod listening will care about this. I found that they have a website. There's a website called Retro Achievements, and it hooks into this thing. And for every video game you play, it has like 30 to 60 achievements you can accomplish. And there's like leaderboards, and it like tracks all of your accomplishments like your own virtual trophy case. And so I got this thing hooked up, and it's like, I'm just loving it because I'm going back to all these games I played as a kid. And it's like, well, I never tried to do that thing. I never tried to do this thing. So it's like reliving my childhood. And that escapism helps.
Let me ask you a question, Rob, because you mentioned how you feel like you're very close to achieving a lot of the things you've been working towards, and as if, and I'll be careful, I'm gonna psychoanalyze you a little bit here, as if that's going to make
Please
you
do.
happy. But if you consider two things, if I said to you, Rob, who is your ideal self? Like if I had you describe your ideal self from a happiness standpoint, from what you spend your time on in a day, how you behave and treat people, and how your relationships are, what your business stuff are, what's the ideal version of you? And then I ask you to give me an honest assessment of the real you, and we look at the distance between those two people, right? Then it's very clear what the path is, right? The path then is to make those two people more similar, to move your real self towards your ideal self. But the problem is, Rob, and this is where I'm getting, the problem is, as you approach these ideals, don't you think you're just going to push the bar out further? And by the way, I think that's a good thing, by the way, because I don't think
it's a fair question.
Finished.
It's definitely a fair question. I think what's different for me is, I think in old Rob, who was, his motives were misaligned, right? It led me astray a lot. It led me to do a lot of things that weren't very fruitful. They weren't very productive. They were dead ends. They were things that took more out of me than put into me. And that adds up, right? That piles up over time, because they're just basically bad time investments, right? And they suck the life out of you, and they drain you, and you know, I could go on forever about that. I'm now in a place where the time I'm putting into things has a return that's better than the time I'm putting in. Okay. What I'm working through is 20 years of time debt, right? Like 20 years of sinking my life into and it's not to say that there wasn't value from those things, that there,
right.
I mean,
that's what I was going to
all the friendships I've built and everything else.
Right.
But
and the lessons learned.
You can't, and the lessons learned. I wouldn't trade any of it. Yeah. But the value, like the drain, right? Like, I mean, you just can't, like, if you guys knew how many hours I've put into things over this last 15 years, you'd be like, what the hell were you thinking?
Well,
right?
I watched you do it over the last 3 years, some of it.
Right. So
I've watched some of it.
I say all that to say, like, I'm digging out, and this is the hole I dug. It's not anybody's fault but my own, but I'm digging out of that. And when I come out of that, what's going to change is there'll be less of a sense of urgency, and there'll be more time to appreciate the moment, take in the moment, be where I'm at, you know? Yeah, I'm sure there's always going to be exciting opportunities and things to chase. But you know, for me, I've always known that I had the ability to do some cool things. And I don't think I've ever positioned myself to personally benefit from those cool things at a level I should for the work I've done. And that is coming to an end. So, yeah.
So
I
Craig,
think that go ahead, Jay, go ahead.
I was going to ask you though. So like, even in that question, I don't know if part of it's kind of like saying, hey, do you plan to keep moving the goalpost or like extending the finish line kind of thing, you know? But I think you also said it too in there that like some of it's a good thing, right?
Right. So my point about that is like, I never think, I never want to get the idea that I'm done bettering myself. Right. Like becoming a better version of myself each day. Like as soon as you sit there and go, okay, I've done it. I think we've stopped kind of dreaming a little bit. And the reality is, no, we're never going to be our ideal self. We should always be approaching that. And I was talking to some students today about this. I was like, in this journey towards your better version of you each day, it's not a straight line. Like it's a 3 steps, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward. Sometimes it's 5 steps back and then 2 steps forward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps forward before you're finally there. And it can be a very indirect route in this path in our journeys, all of us, from who we are today to who we could be. And we're constantly reimagining who we could be and who you wanted to be. What you set up as your ideal version of you 20 years ago is probably not the same what you would consider your ideal version today. You have a more mature perspective, Rob, as you're talking about this. I think what you're saying is your perspective of what that looks like is a much healthier perspective, maybe more attainable, but at the same time, you're not going to attain it. you're never being the perfect you, because we can always be better. There's never a day where I can't be better. And I think
For
that
sure.
that's a healthy perspective, that I don't have to be perfect as long as I'm constantly striving to be moving in the right direction.
But
And with
you
acknowledgement
said
as
the
always.
two words. You said the two words right there, have to. And that's kind of what the crux of what if to sum up your question and the answer to your question, my entire life for the last 20 years has been have tos. If I've gone to Vegas, it's because I've had to. If I've stayed home and grinded 80 hours, because I've had to. If I started a new business, it's because I had to. And
say that.
like, it sounds weird because obviously there's things I've done that I've enjoyed doing, right? And so I don't want to make it sound like, something like 100K. Well, I had to do 100K. I don't want it to sound like that. But what I'm talking about is not the decision. It's the motivation. It's like, I have to do something more than where I'm at. Like, there was this false narrative of like, I have to do something big. I have to do something that gets people's attention. Like, that's gone now. And so now I'm in this realm for the first time. You know what? I can decide to go to Vegas because I want to, or I can decide to do this because I want to, or start this or whatever.
Or better yet, when you change, this is another thing I talk to students and athletes about: have to go to practice, want to go to practice, get to go to practice. Like, when we get to the point where we get to say, I get to go to Vegas this summer, then you are going to enjoy it so much more than even the wanting to, but certainly way more than the have to. I have to go to Vegas summer. I want to go to Vegas summer. I get to go to Vegas this summer. Yeah. When in the types of the work you're doing now, the stuff your excitement about what you're doing is you get to do it. And you're framing this work that you're doing as, I get to do this and I get to do that. And that's, oh man, when you can start framing the things that you used to say you had to do as things that you get to do, and skipping the want to, it's a really,
and the synergy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how all of you, I'll wrap it up with this. I'm curious what all of you think.
I'm curious what
I'm at the first point in my life.
Really hard.
Everything I'm doing synergizes with poker for the first time ever. Like, it's not 7 different projects that are going in 7. Like, everything I do is synergizing in poker, and everything I do in poker is synergizing with everything else I do. So that is, I can't even begin to describe in any practical way how powerfully different that is.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you guys think about that, because that to me has been a massive game changer.
Yeah. I think that there's, to your point, you know how, like, even when I was speaking about like some of the things I'm going through and like the structure and this, and I'm a shot taker, right? We talked about this. I'm an adventurer, right?
You are an adventurer.
But what really started making me think about a lot of this over the last couple of weeks was I talked about my business sense that I've always had, right? But I knew that there were some gaps in it, where this just kind of ties into my poker life, right? And passion, because I'm extremely passionate about the game. That business sense that I wanted to bring into it, like, I knew that there was a slight gap somewhere, right? Because I'm not perfect, and these are things I'm working on. But it's like the bankroll piece, you know what I'm saying? Where I'm not just out there, like, again, shotgunning, And I think like a lot of things that I'm doing are building me for the game long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's really where my mindset, has been. I'm right there with you, because I think we've had a lot of fail points,
Yeah.
What
guardrails are huge. Guardrails are huge. And I think, you said this, I know, Craig, you were talking about how, like, I get to go, or, the I wants. I don't know if you guys recall or saw that interview with Ivy that he was doing not too long ago, where, he talks about, and I get, like, from a money perspective, very, very different ballgame, right? He's in a whole nother league. But the difference for him now, right? He talked about this was, I go and play the game whenever I want now. Like there was like back then it was like a pressure to show up at a big event. You know what I mean? A big series, play all these high rollers, I can, do these things. But now he's just like, I just go whenever I feel like I want to go. You know what I mean? And getting to that place is very different, the things you can do at the table when you're in that space, man, is very different.
For sure.
Yep.
Sean,
what are you? What
15% of the year. We're 15% of the year gone, Sean. What's going on with you?
It's ironic because everything that we were just talking about with Rob, I'm in the same ballpark because for the last couple of years, I've, and you guys know this, been studying and tweaking this and that, soaking in more information than I ever really thought was possible to know in poker. But it's made me enjoy the game a lot less. And when I go and I'm sitting at the table, I would much rather focus on the people flavored tasty treats, not the math, So, but that said, poker can be complicated. And so how do you make it simple? That's kind of been what I've been after for a while. Because I was like, okay, it works for the fish. They're having a great time. They're sitting around the table. They're laughing. They're joking. Why should my brain have to suffer and they get to have fun?
Right.
And so, how much money am I going to lose by not just stomping on the gas pedal every time? So that's what I started to try and work on a bit. And that was bumpy. I've been working on that for maybe 6 months or so. Tried to collaborate with people, but there aren't that many people whose heads are in the same space as mine. So I'd be like, hey, I really want to study and simplify the game. And they'd be like,
Sean,
cool, let's crack open GTO Wizard and look at that. And I'm like, no.
No, I was talking about stealing souls, but okay. We need an acronym for GTO Wizard. It's Stealing Souls Wizard. SSS. No, Stealing Soul. SSW. That's what you need.
SSW.
Stealing Souls Wizard. Yeah.
I don't necessarily
Sean.
Well, I do want to steal them.
Yes, you do.
But
I'm sorry, I interrupted your story. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I mean, but that's that's how it would work when I would try and collaborate with people on trying to simplify the game, and they're like, "Yeah, here's some complicated shit." I don't think you understand what I'm trying to do. So I've been mostly having to kind of lone wolf it, I guess, and it was kind of a slog for a while because it's amazing how difficult it is trying to take complicated stuff and turn it into something really simple. That's actually more complicated than learning the complicated thing in the first place, I think.
Sure. I think so.
Yeah. But after a while I did it, getting pretty close to having some really boiled down, easy to follow stuff that I could just plant into my head and just go to the casino. And the results have been telling the tale. I've been winning lots at the table, and my personal goal has been paying off of getting ridiculed a lot for doing it.
I was going to ask you about that.
It's a wonderful thing. Every time I hear how stupid I am, I'm just head over heels.
I'm doing it right.
See,
I got called an idiot this weekend. It was great.
Yep. It is. It's a great feeling when they.
I was pulling the chips towards me, by the way, as I was being called an idiot. So I think I'm doing it right.
It's a good thing, but and it's funny because poker is unique this way. You really do have to have a good grasp of self-confidence inside of you, not cockiness, but self-confidence, in order to be able to hear that and not want to fire back at them. And at the same time, not totally believe that you're all that at the same time. There's always room for growth.
Sure.
You need to be self-confident enough to be at that table, watch people call you an idiot. And inside, it's because you just turned them inside out and they have no clue.
Yeah.
But you don't need to tell them this.
Right.
You just,
I might have made it worse by calling my card on the river and it showing up. So, but I had
it better. Makes it look like a luck box at that point.
I mean, I mean, it was just math. I was sitting there taking my time because I was doing the math. Am I getting the right price? It was simple. It was a pure math problem, but I had lost track of the size of the pot. So it took me a minute to like do the math. And I was like, I think the math is right. I bricked the turn. I called for my card on the river and it hit. He just got up, called me an idiot because told me it was terrible math, asked me what school I went to that I learned that math. And I was like, I don't know, Duke University. But I didn't say, I just like, oh, my, I got lucky, my bad, So, yeah, I think I loving it, Sean. I'm loving that. I think you're right on.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, do you think, you were saying earlier how, like you've tried to like have conversations about this and it comes across as being like overcomplicated, or people just don't want, typically most of the time, like people just don't want to take the time. Like if they're like me, I just go to the back of the book, right? I'm already in the last chapter, man. I just want to know like what they're like. Okay, how does this shit end? You know what I'm saying? Not all the time. I've learned to not be able to do that, especially like in your poker career, because like results kind of aren't everything all the time. But do you think like your thought process that you have now, because this is working for you, right? So do you think that this is something that you're just going to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I'm just going to continue to do this myself? Or do you even have like a desire, you know what I mean, to say like, well, let me share this with others kind of thing, you know what I mean, that's working for me?
It's occurred to me, but literally every time, because of the goal of the thing. I mean, it kind of works against itself because everybody wants to be an egghead, right? When you tell people that you want to turn their egghead, like grad degree, giant, thick book into Hooked on Phonics,
Right.
they don't want to play. Yeah, they're just not. They're like, well, it's just stupid. It's like, that said, but I've doubled my win rate. So,
sure,
and mainly because what it came down to is I'm spending a hell of a lot less time thinking of every hand and all the different permutations of everything. And instead, I'm like, okay, here's my default, whatever. Now let's look at these guys. Look at this guy. What did he do for the last 10 hands? I'm studying the player now,
right?
Because I'm not bogged down by all this useless information, which over time might be worth an extra 5% on the income. But studying and ripping these players apart, just figuring out what they do, has been worth a whole lot more than that. So it's one of those give and take kind of things. And I mean, what can I say? It's, thinking less is working. I'm enjoying the tables more, which makes me more engaged, and the profit is just far better.
Yeah. And it goes to like what Craig was, made a joke last week. He's not wrong. Where he's like, Jay's spending most of his hours just trying to profile every damn player in the city. And I'm this is why I'm a little more, intrigued about it, because I agree. I think that there's a place where we kind of draw the line, and say like the cards that I'm holding in front of me at this point kind of really don't matter, and some of the things that folks are doing, I'm more locked in on that. And does that apply? And I think part of it is like going through the process. For me, I'm doing it and getting wrecked kind of along the way a little bit. But I think at the same time, though, again, like I just have this long-term part of it that I'm gaining so much information. Like it's not costing me a fortune. You know what I mean? Like I'm not broke.
It's a loss leader.
Right. Because now I'm doing this as just leading indicators too, right? And I like, so yeah, I'm pretty intrigued on that piece, because I think that that's really huge. Is the dynamic piece. We had a conversation with one of the fans and a longtime community member, right? And one of my good friends out here in the poker streets, talking to Scott, DFS Brat. Shout out to DFS Brat. If he's out there in the chat right now watching the show, we had a conversation and we were texting on the side going into an event this weekend. And, there was a comment and he was asking, about good players. And my question back was like, okay, tell me what a good player looks like to you. Right. And in that space, man, like there are certain things that you have to be able to identify that just give you a hint, right? But more importantly, just focus on the dynamic overall, and don't worry about like you getting fancy play syndrome and, I have this hand, because a lot of times like the cards just don't matter,
Yeah,
And it seems
I have
like
blockers.
Right. I have
blockers.
blockers. You know what I mean? Like the other day at the table, we got in a hand and somebody said something. He's like, there's blockers. And I was like, hey, kids, blockers aren't real, And, the whole table laughed. And then like there was a shot where somebody shoved and I had top pair and there was 2 all ins. And I showed my hand because I was the last one to make a decision. I showed it. And they're like, he would have called there. You shouldn't ask me any questions. And I was like, I got kids to feed. I was folding. It's just like, you know what I'm saying? But it seems like you, Sean, have been able to like get into a place where you're making it a little bit easier, and it'd be interesting to see what that looks like in the math.
I have a question.
I think you're going to get a lot of pushback. I agree. You're going to get pushback. People want to be geniuses. Everybody wants to be the solver, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Well, there's where the whole thing, like a lot of people play for ego. They're just trying. They want their ego to be shown. Oh, I was right, or I'm smart, or whatever. And if you don't care about that, and you just care about results, which Sean could give a shit about, but thinks he's smart or not, he's walking away with the money. That seems to be the indicator. So, Sean, I have a question though, because I think I'm curious about this because you and I have studied a lot together, and you and I studied before that. We were studying a lot of the same stuff, from our common coach. And I think that. Do you think that you had a long time to internalize a lot of that? And so a lot of that is just now into your intuitive brain, where you don't have to necessarily think about it. And so that part's already there. Like your foundation is strong enough that it allows you to let go of some of this minutia and nuance, so that you can focus on, at the end of the day, I'm playing the player. My cards may or may not matter as much. The board texture is going to matter, but I'm playing the player. You're playing the player. And that's old school poker. I mean, that's what the game was designed to be. Play the player. Your cards don't matter. I mean, sometimes they do, but that those hands play them. When the cards matter, the hand kind of plays itself most of the time anyway. But where you're getting your edge is exploiting the player. But do you think that you could do that if you didn't have the strong analytical background that you have built for all those years? Because you did a lot of work, and you've done a lot of work.
Yeah. And in a way, the answer is no, I could not have done that. And yes, you're right. I have internalized so much of this information, and so much of it has become just absorbed into my spine. And that's part of the reason I boiled all this down to be so easy, is because the other stuff, it's in my brain. It's already there.
Right.
I just don't want to think about it at the table consciously. I just kind of want it to be there. And I could not have gotten to this point without absorbing that knowledge. That said, and this is not an invitation, kids, at least not yet, I could turn around and teach it to somebody else, and their path to where I am would be about 5% as difficult as my path has been.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, where I can teach what I have learned in regards of that, arriving at the simplicity, but I could not have gotten here without going through all that knowledge in the first place. So
in some ways, you needed to go through the pain.
No, there just wasn't the simplicity of it just hadn't existed yet. It just wasn't there. And because
no one had taken the time.
Well, yeah, maybe. Kind of. It's, and this, because everything we've ever studied, it's very complicated, and then we'll boil it down a little bit, and then it's still complicated, but now it's easier to get your head around, and then you boil it down a little bit, and before too long, we're talking about a concept using 3 or 4 words, and we know what it means. But in reality, it took up like 30 pages in somebody's poker book. Right. So it's kind of like that.
It's like the heuristic for the heuristic,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's really all it is. And then when I walk into the room, and I mean, my playbook, and it does exist. It's
I've seen it.
Uh-oh.
Oh, you've
So
seen
this is a new
version.
one.
Oh,
It's
that's the
right
new one?
there.
Oh, he's got a whole.
We're gonna
that
break
won't
into
fit
his
in my-
house
That
to
won't
steal
fit
it.
in my back pocket. So
It's like
well, the
6.
question would be: is if I pull it out on the table or when I'm
RTA.
playing online, is it considered RTA? No, right?
Well, I mean, no, the
gonna-
key thing is, I mean, if you need it, then Lord help you, because the thing's only like 6 pages long now. That's
That's
and
simple.
as soon as I get that in my head, it's game over. I mean, I'm just gonna be
Sean
sitting
is
there
your
thinking
RTA.
about,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
exactly.
I think Craig, like what you were saying, and like tying it in for I think other folks as well. It's almost like Sean, like what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is example like when you really got into studying. We all know like GTO is the baseline, so we had to put a lot of work in to understand the baseline to get ourselves to okay, now where do the exploits come from, right? And you put a lot of effort and time into that portion. You know what I'm saying? So correct me if I'm wrong. Like essentially it's like the same thought process, right? Like if yes, you could teach somebody this, but there is a lot of data within your brain, right? That you have had to do over years, you know what I mean? To get to this place.
Yeah, kind of. Part of where I had to go was going through a lot of that information and then getting to the end of the information and turning around and looking back at the information and saying, that's bullshit. I don't
Right.
need it. A lot of the information.
Yeah,
So I have absorbed a lot, but I've also shed a lot. I mean, it's in the back of my mind, but I'm looking at it going, I don't need this. I don't need this
I
to
think
play this game.
That's really good because I would have said, and you could push back on this a little bit, that there was a time, maybe a year ago or maybe a little bit longer, where you were trying to do too much. Like you were trying to understand everything to a level that was unnecessary. And you were kind of torturing yourself to like get more and more and more. And I think it's really cool that when you finally got the other side, you look back, you're like, oh my God, that's bullshit. And I didn't need it.
Mhm. At the time, I couldn't know which parts I did and didn't need, I guess, but
okay.
yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. It's like I was trying to slam every variety of information into my head for a
and it
long
was
time.
creating an anxiety. I think that was also making it more difficult. Like I felt like you were putting if I were being like looking back, I felt you were being so hard on yourself as you were going through some of that studying, and and the anxiety about it was making it a little difficult. And I think it's really, really healthy that you're now kind of like anti-anxiety about it. Not, it's like you just the letting that go has just really and now you get to sit down and enjoy playing, and as a result, the win rates increase. It's like everything is a win-win here. So I'm excited for you and I'm happy for you. And I'm hoping that I can, move my game in that direction too. I seem to feel the same similarly when I'm playing cash versus tournaments though. Like I find that easier playing cash. And I think that you're super smart to kind of like lean into that direction and like say, why would I go back to torturing myself with these tournaments where, one hand could just undo a day's work versus just like, I'll pick up and take my winnings and go home and do it again the next day. So
right.
Exactly. Yeah. I may swing back around to tournaments at some point, but
yeah,
I've found a certain amount of comfort in cash now. And it's easier because of the smaller amount of variance. It also means that I get to play live more.
Yeah.
And that's where I really kind of thrive anyway, because basically, I don't know, you guys joke about it, but I can sit at a table and I can just look into people. You can't do that online, and that's where a large part of my true advantage lies. So it's all good.
Live is an edge in itself, man. In my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Rob, take us home, man.
Oh, I'm optimistic, I guess, for where everybody's at. I've said
Better
since
be.
the beginning.
God damn, we're going in the right place, man. Be optimistic.
Well, that's one of the things I've excited about this project is I feel like everybody's kind of ready for a breakout year.
We're going to find out later tonight that Day's going to win this tournament that she's playing.
Yeah,
she's got a nice stack. She's 6 from the money
got a
right
good
now.
stack right now.
She's been sending updates here on
How
the.
does she just win all
phone.
the time? Got to figure it out.
Well, again, like all of us have put in the work. Like who has not put in the work here? We all have. So what better time to flip the camera on than when, it's time to start catching momentum and ride the wave of all the hard work we've done. So very excited about that.
She's only 6 from the money, man.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I didn't hear you say that. My bad. I knew she had a stack. Oh, shut up, Craig.
Jay's too busy looking at the price of his Hawk Tua coin. So
yeah.
What is that? Never mind. I don't want to know, do I?
Craig, I got one of these in the mail for you, buddy.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
there's a whole world out there.
It'll
Rob,
enlighten your life.
Rob, did you ever read that book that I suggested for you?
Do you really have to answer the question? Did I read a book?
God,
how long have you known me?
Oh, long enough to know. I think you
Fahrenheit 151.
If you want me to read a book, if you want me to read a book,
451.
Here's what you have to do.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yes, 451.
You want me to read a book? You've got to send me a copy of an audio book that'll like link into my thing, and then you got to do it right before I take a trip where I have to drive.
Okay,
and you listen to this on your next trip.
All right, fair enough.
I don't reading is so inefficient. I can't believe you even read at this point.
Sorry.
I read every day.
Yeah.
Why?
Sorry. 151.
I got things to learn. I have things to learn.
But you can listen to an audiobook and go through it 5 times faster than you can read it. So why would you ever?
Because I got to stop and internalize it. I'd be stopping it all the time to think about the shit I was just listening to.
Here's a pause button.
Think, man. I know.
I'm starting to be skeptical about the neuroscience program at Duke. I'm starting to wonder.
What are you talking about? How do you think
North Carolina
neuroscience?
Maybe North Carolina would have been a better choice for you. You might have learned a little bit more.
I got into North Carolina. I turned them down. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. We're gonna get it out of here. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Best of luck to Day and Mika out on the streets and Brett selling his house. For Craig, for Jay, and for Sean, we are out of here.
I'm going for mine. You put it on